Okay, greetings. We're here from the county line, but this week we're back at St. Patrick Church with my parish priest, Father Chris Shockley, who makes religion not only fun and entertaining, but also very informative. So I promised last week we'd get into the Catholic stuff a little bit, and Bill Moyer, who is a comedian, I think that's how he pronounces his name, and I think was raised in the Catholic Church, has said that, he's an atheist now, or claims to be, but he said that belonging to the Catholic Church is a lot like having another mother-in-law, because there's a lot of rules, a lot of things that we're supposed to do and not do. But I'm going to, just because this is the last episode you can sit with us this week, I want to get right to the dirty stuff and ask you, do Catholics hate sex?
No. The Catholic Church thinks that sex is a beautiful, wonderful thing, and honestly holds it up as a truly miraculous thing to be involved with. And it is such an honored thing that it has a proper place. And a lot of people do get this idea, and part of it is they get it from their grandmothers, they get it from their mothers, they get it from their fathers. Like,
their mother-in-laws.
They just can't talk about it. Like, it's a topic they can't talk about. And I probably shouldn't put online a whole bunch of the details of things, but like, I'm fairly comfortable talking to people about these topics. But
you're celibate.
I'm a celibate.
So it's... I don't want to get into your college life, Father,
but the reality of what it is in a certain sense body language that speaks. And the Catholic viewpoint of it is it's body language that speaks marriage. Because the Catholic view of marriage is that the sacrament of marriage is when two baptized people come together and give themselves to each other fully, freely, faithfully, and fruitfully. And with God's grace keeping them together in that commitment, they're living that life together fully, freely, faithfully, fruitfully. You look at the marital act, and in its truest form, it should be two people who come together and give themselves to each other fully, holding nothing back, nothing between them, nothing's hidden. Freely, that they're not being forced into it. It's not the marital act if somebody's not willingly a participant. Faithful. People don't enter into that even prior to marriage without expecting some kind of faithfulness from the other person. Like, inherent to it, people expect faithfulness from somebody in that kind of relationship. And fruitfulness, it is the only thing you can do that brings about life. It is the one thing that you can do to bring about life, is two people coming together in this act or some manipulation of that act. And this is what the body language of sexuality speaks. It speaks marriage. And because the church sees this connection between the two, the church holds it up as something that has its particular place. And frankly, any time one of these four is missing in the sexual act, it's missing something of what it's supposed to be. And like, outside of marriage, there's not necessarily that commitment to faithfulness. Outside of marriage, many times people are trying to avoid children. The second you're married, the fear of having a child becomes the joy of getting pregnant. Like, some of the greatest fears of people who are in a relationship like this outside of marriage, the fears become the hope. Like, the fear of getting pregnant becomes the hope of getting pregnant. And this whole reality of every time a married couple comes together, they're renewing their vows. And when a couple enters into this beforehand, there's really a sense of they know there's a lie wrapped up in this. Like, there's something not right and they know it. At the same time, it's about love. And love means you do what is best for the other person. And if you think about before marriage, entering into this kind of relationship, if you ask the question, am I doing what's best for the other person? And the answer is, no, I'm not. That means if I'm not doing what's best for them because of all the different fears it creates for them, then I'm not showing them that I love them. No matter how much I may intend to show the love, I'm not actually loving them if I'm entering into this thing that would not be best for them. Then when we turn it around, a lot of people enter into those kind of relationships before marriage because they're trying to experience love. But again, if love is doing what's best for the other, you look at that and it's like, okay, are they doing what's best for me in this moment? And again, you look at all the fears that it causes when you're not married, and the answer becomes no, they're not. They're not doing what's best for me. And while there may be great intentionality on both sides to try to show love to the other person, it's not. And it is such a deep truth that to lie to somebody with body language so intimate is one of the greatest of lies.
Well, why is that? If a young couple is, with their hormones and whatever else they got going on, or physically need one another, what's wrong with them satisfying their needs?
Well, I think it's interesting to use the word need.
Okay.
Like, a need is something that you cannot live without. And the reality is, while our brain chemistry can be really out there in our teenage years, it's important to realize that's not a need. Like that's a want, that's a desire. It's not a need. There's a natural human draw towards procreation, and yet it's still not a need. You don't die if you don't procreate. We need food, water, shelter. These are needs. We do need love. We do need other people. We need relationships. We don't need to have a sexual relationship. It's not a need for that. And at the same time, if we're really needing love, we really need love. And that's what the church wants for people. And at the same time, people go, oh, the church is so judgy. No, the church says we're all sinners. This guy, sinner. We're all sinners. This is one set of sins. And in fact, it is rare that you will ever hear a priest talk about it from the pulpit. People think the Catholic Church is all obsessed with this. But in truth, I can't think the last time I heard a priest speak about it from the pulpit. People think we're talking about it from the pulpit all the time because the media is constantly asking us questions like this.
I've never heard it either, but it is something that comes up.
People think that we're talking about it all the time in the Catholic Church, and the reality is, I don't think it ever gets talked about on a regular basis in Catholic churches. You've got the one-off priest who talks about it every time, but across the country, across the world, it is rare that a priest is talking about that from the pulpit. Small group studies, maybe it comes up. Bible studies, it comes up. But the regular Catholic, because the media talks about it all the time, about the Catholic Church's teaching, the people think the Catholic Church is always talking about it, and we're really not.
The Catholic Church has a pretty strong position on abortion. Yet, apparently, polls show that the majority of Americans favor abortion.
Mm-hmm.
What's the Catholic belief's basis in preserving life?
So the Catholic Church's belief in life has developed over time because the science has developed over time. And if you look to the 12th century, when did life begin? In the 12th century, there was not an understanding of conception. Like the way that we understand conception today, they didn't have that understanding. And theologians spoke differently. They always condemned the killing of a child in the womb. But when did the life begin of that child was seen differently. Today we know life begins at conception. At conception, a unique DNA structure is created. That is a unique human being. That structure is only going to grow into a human being. It is going to grow, maybe it makes it to full gestation, but the entire time that it is growing, it is unique from the mother. It is not just a clump of cells that's part of the mother that might become a different human being. It already has a different DNA from the mother. It is not a part of the mother, but it's dependent upon the mother. And that child in the womb, part of it is saying, does God make mistakes? Like, if you think that abortion is right, inherent in that is saying, God made a mistake causing this child to come into existence. And the Catholic Church proclaims every single person is valued. Every single person has a purpose. Even a child who does die in the womb, there was a purpose for that child's life because that child affected their family, and they were and maintain being a part of that family. And so every child and every human being, every person has a purpose, and God doesn't make mistakes. And so
there are no circumstances where an abortion would be appropriate.
There are no circumstances where an abortion,
saving the mother's life,
abortion as abortion is appropriate. There are the Catholic Church is very nuanced. Like it does dive into the nitty-gritty of certain things, where to attack a child to save the mother is wrong. But sometimes when we treat the mother, the child will die, but we do not attack the child in treating the mother. For example, I'll use two examples. Chemotherapy. If a mother is found to have cancer and they need chemo, they can take chemo. And they're taking chemo to treat their cancer. The reality is, the way cancer works, chemo works, and pregnancy works, it's probably going to kill the child. But you're not aiming to kill the child. You accept that, well, if the mother's going to die from this cancer, the child's going to die as well. You accept that the child will die from the chemo. You hope the child won't, but you accept it. You never aim to kill that child. You aim to kill the cancer. On a similar nature is ectopic pregnancies. This one gets brought up a lot. There are different ways of handling an ectopic pregnancy where a child is...
What is that?
That's where a child's conceived and implants itself outside of the womb.
Okay.
They can implant themselves a lot of different places, but like particular danger is when it's the ectopic pregnancy is in the fallopian tube. If it's in the fallopian tube, that tube can rupture, and if it ruptures, the child and the mother will pass. That's almost a given. The ectopic pregnancy, there are multiple ways you can handle it. You can handle it by doing a chemical abortion, where you directly attack the child and you basically try to dissolve the child in the fallopian tube. Or you can do a surgical procedure where you remove that portion of the fallopian tube that the child is attached to. In an ideal world, having removed the child from and that piece of the fallopian tube from the mother, you have done no harm to the child. You have not attacked the child. And in an ideal world, we would re-implant that child someplace else. Unfortunately, we don't have the technology to do that. Like, removing the child from that point, there's nothing more we can do to help the child. We've stopped the child from being a victim of the rupture of the fallopian tube. We've stopped the mother from being a victim of the rupture of the fallopian tube. But there's nothing more we can do to help that child. We let that child pass. We let that child die, but we never directly attack the child. And so that's what some people say, well, that's an abortion. And it's like, the biggest distinction is that we never attack the child. The child isn't the problem. That piece of the fallopian tube that the child's attached to is the problem. We remove that portion of the fallopian tube, and we know that the child won't survive, but we never attack the child. So that's not an abortion.
God doesn't make mistakes.
God doesn't make mistakes.
Which, Pope Francis has been under fire a little bit for his evolving views on homosexuality. Does the church hate gay people?
The church does not hate anyone. And I would even say that Pope Francis' views are evolving. Like, much of what he says, the media reports what they want to report. And he's also said, Pope Francis has said this, I'm the age that I am. I would be a fool to try to change how I am at this point. And the reality of much of what Pope Francis says is he's saying things that the church has taught before, but he's saying it in a different way, and people hear it differently. Like, he has been a very strong advocate that he doesn't believe in people being adopted into families of same-sex couples. He has said that he holds that marriage is between a man and a woman. He has said that we can't bless the union of a man and a woman. We can't bless a union between two men or two women. But the reality of the biggest quasi-scandal around Francis right now has been, there's been a document from the Vatican with Francis' approval that says people who are in same-sex unions can receive spontaneous blessings from a priest. Basically, this was a non-change, I'd probably say, for most of, well, definitely for the U.S., but like in most parts of the world, it was a huge shift for practical purposes. But like anybody who came up to me and asked for a blessing, I'd give a blessing to. I wouldn't grill them on what's their state in life and what's the sins they struggle with. Like, no, if somebody came up to me and asked for a blessing, I'm going to bless them. If two people came up to me and asked for a blessing, I'm going to bless them. Am I going to bless, if they ask me to bless their union as two men or two women, no, I can't bless that. And that's what the document says. I can't bless that. Because it's contrary to the natural order. It's contrary to the church view of marriage. It's contrary to many things that we stand for as Catholics. But those two people are still loved by the church. And that's what Francis wants us to emphasize, is that the person himself or herself is loved by the church no matter what. All of us are sinners. We all fall short in one way or another. And all of us need blessings to go from where we are to where God desires us to be.
Well, this has been great. I had 2 pages of questions I wanted to ask you, so I hope we can do this again sometime.
I would look forward to it.
I'll bring the beer next time.
Okay.
And one of the things I want to talk about is the Mass itself, because it can be so intimidating to somebody that just walks through the door. And I hope you can help us understand some of the absolute magic that you're able to
I don't like the word magic, but I understand what you're saying.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, that's it for this week. I hope Father Shockley can come back sometime, because we've got a lot more to talk about.
Thank you for having me, and once more, God bless.
Thank you, Father.